Okay, Vice President Watkins, go ahead.
All right, good evening, everybody. I'm calling this meeting to order at 5:31 p.m. We will start with our flag salute. Go ahead. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll move to roll call. Trustee Corzo.
Present.
Trustee Chin.
Here.
And I am here. Trustee Proctor is absent this evening. Moving on to 2C, approval of tonight's agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Chin for the motion. Trustee Corzo for the second. We'll do a roll call vote. Trustee Corzo.
Yes.
Trustee Chin.
Yes.
And I will vote yes as well. We are now moving on to 3A, public statements. I'm a little rusty with this. It's been a couple of years. The San Mateo-Foster City School Board cannot act upon any matter that has not been included and publicly posted on the agenda, except under limited circumstances as permitted by law. The board may refer matters raised in this forum to staff for investigation and/or action where appropriate. Please limit your statements to 3 minutes. I will turn it over to Forrest, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay, at this time, if there are any members in the audience that would like to make public comments on items not related to today's agenda, please use the raise your hand function within Zoom now. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Okay, we have one comment. Lina, I'm going to open up the comments to you now.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Liana Torgerson, and I wanted to speak my observations at Beresford Elementary. My time with the school has been lengthy. My oldest child has graduated, and my youngest is about to graduate. When school is about to start, you can count on having at least one friend in the yard, Mr. Jorge. Mr. Jorge puts a smile on students, teachers, and parents' faces with his welcoming. Mr. Jorge engages students with his kindness and respect, and Mr. Jorge keeps our schools clean and organized. Mr. Jorge is a role model. He's a part of Beresford School. Organizations all have problems. However, all problems are not equal. Therefore, I'm here to ask that we solve real problems, better problems for success. Letting good work be rewarded, letting commitment thrive, and letting Mr. Jorge decide when he has had enough of Beresford. With this, I appreciate you listening and taking this into consideration.
Okay, thank you for your time. There are no other members of the audience that wish to make a public comment.
Great, thank you. We will close public comment at this time. Moving on to 3B, public statements related to agenda items. Persons will be called on at the appropriate time. 3C, moving on to foundation and committee reports.
So we had a sanctuary task force meeting just a couple of hours ago, and we took the opportunity to reflect on our why we chose to be a part of the sanctuary task force, as well as reflecting on the history of the task force, which, if you can look to your left over here, if you're present in the boardroom, you will see a timeline with a lot of different pieces of the work that were done throughout the years. Can you show with your tablet. Thank you. Ken's going to show us the timelines. It's far away, but thank you. Thank you, Trustee Chin. So this is just some of the work that was done throughout the years by the Sanctuary Task Force. And yeah, it's important to reflect on what has happened. And our director of English Learner Services will be helping us envision the future work of the task force. Thank you.
I'll just follow. On Monday night, we had a San Mateo County School Board Association meeting where Trustee Corzo and I were there, and we had two great presentations from Vernon Billy, who is the president of the California School Board Association, and then also Kevin Gordon, who is I forget his official title, but he's with Capital Partners, who does a lot of the lobbying and financial analysis based off of the governor's budgets and what's happening with the state. I thought it was a really, really good meeting in terms of figuring out what was recently passed and how it affects us. There was conversations about the universal TK and how for in a district like ours, and I'd say maybe half of the districts in San Mateo County, as a community funded district, that is an unfunded mandate because we are community funded. And so it was something that was a big topic of a conversation. It was actually really good. It was good seeing everybody in person again, good connecting with a lot of the other trustees in our county. And I feel like after a couple of years of the pandemic, I just feel like there's some good things coming out of San Mateo County from this group. So stay tuned.
Great, thank you. On my end, the gala is happening tomorrow, the Ed Foundation Gala. So if you have not already registered to attend, please do so. You'll see it all over social media and on the district website and the Ed Foundation website. The silent auction is open, so please check that out to set up an account with Greater Giving, which there's instructions again for how to do that. Looking forward to seeing folks virtually. There's a couple of house parties that are being hosted around the district and some really, really amazing auction items. So hoping to see many folks there. Any other foundation or committee reports? Okay. Moving on to 3D, SMETA, CSEA, and SMEA updates. If you could bring in folks for us, that would be great. Hello, who wants to kick us off?
Go ahead and start. Hello, everyone. I will keep this pretty short today because I don't have a lot to say, but I do know that actually before break, I had a chance to speak with Dr. Christian Rubalcaba about the community schools and initiative. And I think this does offer a lot of really exciting opportunities for 5 of our schools. And I'm just looking forward to continuing that conversation on how we as SMETA members can partner along with the district and other partner community members, families, as we're planning and co-creating what these schools are going to be looking like in the next couple of years. So that's definitely an exciting opportunity for these schools and how we're going to be working together. I know that many of our members appreciated the chance to participate in the BIPOC affinity spaces that have been set up over the course of this end of last year, course of this year as well. And the meetings that are being held on alternate Thursdays, we want to thank people that are involved in putting those together. And I had a bunch of sites reach out to me recently just to reiterate how thankful we all are for our custodial staff. Over the break was October 2nd, was actually National Custodial Appreciation Day. And while the custodians are not members of SMETA, we SMETA members are realize how critical they are to our school community. And we do stand with our custodians and appreciate what they do each and every day. And I know a lot of sites have been asking for just us, a lot of SMETA members have been asking that we make that known. So that's what I have to say today.
Thank you, Kathy. I see Caleb and Stephanie.
I can go. Good evening. My name is Stephanie Fermeni. I am the proud principal of Meadow Heights Elementary School and wanted to take this opportunity to share some highlights with you about what's going on here at Meadow Heights. As you probably know, all of our schools are implementing our new PATH literacy program. And Meadow Heights is doing something new this year with our first and second grade classrooms. We've started something called WIN time, and WIN stands for what I need. And so what that looks like is within each grade level, students are grouped according to what they need in the area of literacy. And so they may be going to a different teacher for their WIN time. And this allows our teachers to give targeted, explicit literacy instruction. And so I'm really excited that we've been able to start that this year and using our PATH literacy program to do that. Our teachers started conferences this week, and many other schools are probably in the same situation. And we offer conferences one day in the evening for our parents that have busy working schedules during the day. And that's just one of our ways to work on building community with our families and accommodate their busy schedules. And teachers are able to share things that they're excelling, that they're successful at, and then areas that we need to work together on improving. And then finally, I wanted to just share that Meadow Heights had a very successful International Food Festival in late September. We were able to have over 250 people attend. Would like to give a shout out to Trustee Chin for stopping by and visiting us. And it just really was a really wonderful opportunity to be in person, enjoying amazing food from so many different countries that represented our student body at Meadow Heights, and was a real positive community builder to kick off our school year. And that's it.
And I'm Caleb Bowers, the principal at Bowditch. So I'll give you some brief updates about Bowditch Middle School. This is my second year being the principal, longtime administrator, being the assistant principal there as well. So I'm going to try to structure it just like the strategic plan, Superintendent Choa. So achievement, this is what we're working on in middle school. Block schedule implementation. So this year is our first year for 85-minute block periods. So students see their teachers 3 days a week. Mondays is periods 1 through 7, and then 2 block days. So we're really working with teachers on changing instruction practices to meet the longer block and what teachers need to be successful and how to keep students engaged during that time. Along with that, we have teachers that are receiving release periods for language arts, math, social studies, and English language development this year, so that they can attend district meetings and bring that information back and be the instructional leaders that bring that to their departments. So that's working out well. Most of you were at Bowditch a few weeks ago to celebrate the college and career class through Paxton Patterson. We were excited to host that event on the district's behalf. Students are receiving and learning college and career skills in a variety of different disciplines, from medical to technology to drones to all different interesting things. So we're excited to host that event. We also hosted an event to celebrate groundbreaking for Measure X, which is to build a new drama and new science building. So that work has begun. On the swordfish side, if you drive by campus, there are fences up and work is definitely beginning. So we are excited that work has taken place. For equity, we continue our work in advisory period through our second step curriculum for social emotional learning. We've also added a program called No Place for Hate over the past year and actually made that a club and an elective. And that focuses specifically on bias and hate speech and reading that on our campus. So we have student leaders that go around and do lessons and try to be the voice of reason to say this is why we need to act differently on campus and this is what we're seeing. And so students signed a pledge a few weeks ago that they were going to work to end hate speech on campus. And so that is definitely something that we're making priority. And obviously at the middle school, things are said and things are done, and we want to acknowledge, have students acknowledge what's going on and also learn what's appropriate and what's not. So that's what we're doing there. For wellness, our care team meets weekly to discuss students' social, emotional, and academic needs for Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 supports. This year we are very thankfully have a full-time psychologist, a full-time student support services, TOSA, and a YSB school safety advocate that provides counseling 4 days a week. So with all those additional services, we go through students in need and make an individual plan for them with their parents of how we can support them at school, at home, and in the community. We're also working on making a wellness center, as Burrell has done recently. We have a space ready and we're ready to furnish that so that we can have that open to students throughout the school day. So that's a little bit about what we're working on at Bowditch. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie and Caleb. Do we have CSCA here this evening? No. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody, for the updates. Really appreciate it. Moving over to 3E, board announcements. Do you guys have any? No? Okay. I wanted to take this opportunity to share that a former board trustee passed away earlier this month, Lori Lawson. Our board will be adjourning tonight's meeting in her honor, but because our closed session now falls at the end of our meetings when most people have left, I just wanted to take a couple of moments to share a little bit about Lori's contributions and the legacy that she left in our district. So her involvement in our district was a journey and definitely leaves a legacy of involvement for others. Lori was one of the first people that I met when I was campaigning for school board in 2017. But Lori's journey with our district began before her sons were actually old enough to go to school. She was interested in one of the new magnet programs in the district, which was a Spanish immersion program at Fiesta Gardens, which had been closed for a decade previous to that. And she was an active member in the planning committee that worked for a year before Fiesta Gardens opened. And her oldest son, Ford, was a member of the first class. And her active involvement at Fiesta Gardens continued through the end of her younger son, Clark's time at Fiesta Gardens. So she was a leader first as a parent and then as a board member. And not just one, but 8 parcel tax and bond campaigns starting in 1996 through Measure X in 2015. She was also a multi-year member of the Education Foundation and really believed that private funding should be raised district-wide for all students. And she also was a part of the Kids and Families First Council, which was a joint endeavor between the city and the school district to address the needs of children and families beyond the school day. And then in 2005, she decided to run for the school board and was successful. And was then reelected 2 more times before she resigned from the board in August of 2017, right before Trustee Corzo and myself joined, due to her family's relocation to Washington State, where she grew up. So during her time in our district, whether as a parent or as an involved community member or an elected trustee, she was a fierce advocate for public education and for the district and meeting the needs of all students, and she will definitely be missed. Again, we'll be adjourning our meeting tonight in Lori's honor. Moving on to 3F, which is the superintendent report.
Thank you, Vice President Watkins. My remarks tonight going to span a couple of different schools and a few events that we recently had. I want to celebrate the staff over at Burrell Middle School who put out a wonderful event that happened this week, inaugurating their wellness center. We have a wonderful team of counselors there. The point person for the wellness center this year is Mr. Lopez. He's dynamic. He cares about these kids. I want to give kudos to our facilities and maintenance department who helped put that room together and did a lot of support behind the scenes. Our entire team in the district really working with the Burrell staff to get that off the ground, and kudos to our principal, Mrs. Nadi, for supporting the effort. One of the things that happened this week is we were able to have a student use our new anonymous alert system. Anybody can go to any one of our middle school websites and open up anonymous alerts. It's a way for parents and students to tell us what's going on in our schools in a way that's safe and private. And that just happened this week. We were able to step in and work on a disciplinary issue with this information from a student who remained anonymous. And really, it was just a wonderful way for it to all come together the same week that we're inaugurating this wellness center to give the students that need more counseling support, more assistance. So kudos to all of those team members who participated in that. I want to shine some light on Beach Park Elementary School. The school is about to initiate a design thinking team. This, you can think of it as in place of a student council. These will be 4th or 5th graders. We have a dynamic principal at that school, Amy Snow. She's doing a wonderful job. She and her team are supporting their students in getting Lego lessons off the ground. I spoke to the principal. Her kids absolutely, all caps, LOVE, love it. And parent volunteers have been great in supporting us in that process. They had a PTA meeting at Beach Park. The school has a little above 240 kids, and they had 190 parents attend this online PTA council. So kudos to our Beach Park leopard sharks. If you haven't seen it, go to the website. It's a very cute logo. I don't know of any other leopard shark schools in California. So I'll have someone on our team do the research on that, but very cool work going on at Beach Park. We also have a wonderful counselor there who's doing some very specific bully prevention lessons and really backing up the second step curriculum work that our student services team is out there promoting. Another school I want to highlight tonight is Highlands Elementary School. They have a team of kids at their school that they call the PAWS, P-A-W-S Patrol. So that's kind of cute. And basically what these kids do is they go out on the playground during recess and lunch, and they act as peer mediators. They help kids work through issues they're having. They play with their friends, and they're really just wonderful supports for their younger classmates there at the school. In addition to that, Highlands is another school with just a lot of parent support, and we really want to thank our parents there at Highlands who volunteer in the art and action program, but also the school has a really strong school garden program, and they're currently, for those of you that might be looking for a good salad later this week, they are growing kale, squash, rosemary, and Swiss chard. If you haven't tried Swiss chard, don't be afraid. it's packed with vitamins and nutrients, and it's delicious. So thank you to all of our parents there at Highlands. And then you heard a couple minutes ago from our principal at Meadow Heights, Stephanie Fermeni, but her school is also going to get a little bit of shine tonight, and that's they have a new program or a program this year called Peacekeepers. These are older students who come in, fifth graders, and work with first and second graders. So it's really that peer mentorship, that support, that leadership that we're seeing our kids give. The school counselor there at Meadow Heights is providing mindfulness lessons that we pair that really focus and engage the kids in self-awareness, empathy, kindness, and gratitude. And last but not least, they had 25 families come out to their English Language Advisory Committee meeting. That's a really high percentage for a school with their enrollment. And they spent a lot of time encouraging families and teaching them how to use Footsteps of Brilliance and ST Math. And that is my report for tonight.
Thank you, Superintendent Ochoa. We will move on now to the proposed consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda are considered by the board to be routine and will be enacted by the board in one motion in the form listed below. There will be no discussion on these items prior to the time the board votes, unless members of the board, staff, or public request specific items be removed and discussed from the consent agenda. The superintendent and staff recommend approval of all consent items. Movement of any recommended consent item is appropriate at this time. Anything from Trustee Chin or Corzo? Forrest, if you could please check with the public to see if anybody has anything they would like removed.
Yes, if there are any members of the public that would like to comment, please use the raise your hand functionality within Zoom now. Vice President Watkins, there are currently no members of the public that would like to make public comment.
Great, thank you so much. All right, open for a motion.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Chin for the motion and Trustee Corzo for the second. Roll call vote. Trustee Corzo.
Yes.
Trustee Chin.
Yes.
And I will vote yes as well. Passes 3-0. I also realized I just wanted to highlight that there are 34 attendees on our meeting right now. All right, we will be moving, and translation.
Bienvenidos a nuestra junta. Por favor, levanten la mano o también pueden hacer clic en su pantalla en el icono del mundo para cambiar a idioma español ahí. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Okay, we will move on to 5A, SMFC School District and CSEA tentative MOU agreement.
Trustees. Firstly, I am very thankful for our CSEA partners. They have throughout our COVID epidemic been fabulous about helping schools stay safe by helping to track COVID cases that may occur at the school sites. This MOU is very similar to the one that was passed last year, that was signed last year. And it's recognizing the fabulous administrative assistants that are at each site. There's one at each site who continues to basically be a COVID champion and let us know if there are any COVID cases on the school sites. They also send out letters to those who may have come into contact with someone who has COVID, that's COVID positive, to make sure that they're aware of their possible exposure. So with that said, I am asking that you please affirm this MOU and pass the MOU this evening.
Great, thank you, Diana. Any clarifying questions from the board? Okay, we'll turn it over to public comment. Forrest. Forrest, if we could ask for public comment at this time, that would be great.
Yes, if there are any
Thank you.
members of the audience that would like to make public comment, please use the raise your hand function within Zoom now. Okay, Vice President Watkins, there are no members of the audience that would like to make public comment.
Thank you so much. Turning it back to the board for any comments. If there are no comments, we can take a motion.
A motion to approve this agenda item.
I'll second.
Thank you, Trustee Corzo, for the motion and Trustee Chin for the second. Roll call vote. Trustee Corzo.
Yes.
Trustee Chin.
Yes.
And I will vote yes as well. Motion passes 3-0. Thank you.
Trustees.
Moving on to item 6A, review of district interim assessment data.
Thank you, Vice President Watkins. Good evening, Board and Superintendent. I'm David Chambliss, Assistant Superintendent from Ed Services. Give me just a second here, and I'm going to share my screen with you. It's my pleasure to have an opportunity this evening to update you on what we call our interim assessments and to share with you those results and invite discussion. And I will go into slideshow mode here. All right. We offer 3 times during the year an opportunity for our students to take what we call interim assessments in literacy and math. We have just completed a set of those, and that's why we want to update you about those results. We've completed the first round of literacy assessments for K-8. At the K-2 level, that's a new literacy assessment grounded in a curriculum that we call the PATH curriculum. And then 3rd through 5th, actually for the first time this year, is taking the reading inventory, which is an assessment that we have historically given at 6-8, which also took it this year. And then we've completed our K-5 math common formative assessments, or CFAs. And just this week, we're beginning the middle school assessments. So the results on those we'll bring back to you at a subsequent date. The key thing about these interim assessments is it gives us that data right now that we can act upon and understand the needs of our students. So whether we need to do small group learning assignment or provide classroom support or after school intervention. Also importantly, it gives us sort of real-time data to understand how our strategies are going. So it gives us that sense of feedback. Let me start first to talk this evening about the literacy assessments. Again, the new assessments that are given at K2. In kindergarten, there is an alphabet test, which is really, it is actually sort of a letter sound test where we ask students to pronounce the sounds that letters make, and then also to give them the sound of a letter and have them write that letter. So it's not, A, B, C, D, E, it's actually the sounds that we associate with those letters. And then at 1st and 2nd grade, we are giving as our interim assessment what's called the single word reading assessment. And you note there that it measures the ability of our students to automatically read words in isolation. So this really focuses in on their ability to decode and recognize a word. And then again, at the 3rd through 8th grade, we are doing our reading inventory. And that is an assessment which provides us with a lexile level for students. And you can see there it's measured by determining the lengths of sentences and the frequency of certain words. Students with higher lexile levels, of course, can read longer sentences with more novel vocabulary. So another aspect of implementing these assessments this year is our effort to, hang on here, I'm trying to, advance that, a little delay there. We really were focusing on making sure that we had high rates of participation as a result of the COVID period and also some of the challenges of the prior assessments we gave. We often struggled to have a satisfactory participation rate, and as you can see here, we definitely hit the mark and really want to thank certainly our teachers and our site leaders for the coordination of an assessment where essentially almost all of our students have completed it. The results, and I apologize, I'm having a little delay with my computer here. Let's see, there we go. Okay, you can see the breakdown. We are reporting on the results of these assessments in the same way that we report on CASP and other assessments, by identifying what students are exceeding grade level performance, what students are meeting, those who are nearly meeting, and those who have not yet met. And you can see the distribution across for each grade level. And then here is that same assessment, K2. This is organized around sort of key student groups. And again, this is our ability to see how specific groups of students are doing. We are entering into this foundational literacy work because we know we have some significant gaps in our students' reading performance. And this assessment certainly calls that out. And it's why we're engaged in this foundational literacy work. Here is an analysis then of the reading inventory. And again, we took the Lexile performance and we have mapped it into this exceeded, met, nearly met, not met. And you can see the performance of our 3rd through 8th grades there. And then, excuse me. And then here is that same presentation of reading inventory by student group. So one of the things we often wonder is, how do these assessments tell us how our students are progressing toward performance on the CASP assessment? Now, the CASP assessment obviously is a longer, much more comprehensive assessment than these interim assessments, but they give us some clues as to how our students are progressing and potentially could perform. And you can see we're actually quite excited that the level of performance here, first of all, for all students, then for our English learners group, and then for our students with disabilities. Our fall assessments indicate, at least at this point in the year, the potential of our students to outperform their performance on CASP from last spring. And again, here we're giving you just the percentage that exceeded and met. Since that in effect is, that's the goal. We want to make sure that all students are meeting or exceeding grade level performance. All right, let's turn to the elementary math common formative assessment. This assessment is a little bit different than our literacy assessments in that it is an interim assessment that looks at what students have just learned. The content is related only to the content that they've just learned in class. So in this respect, we don't have the ability to talk about progress across time during the year. It's more a dipstick at 3 moments during the year where we can say, oh, well, this is the number of students that we see are understanding the content at grade level. We have 2 components of our elementary assessment. One is rooted in its curriculum embedded. It's rooted in our Zern curriculum. And the second is what we call a performance task. These are tasks that are adapted from what are called the MARS assessments, supported by the Silicon Valley Math Initiative. So combined, these two kinds of or aspects of our assessment actually approach the rigor and complexity of questions that are asked on the CASP assessment. And again, oh my gosh, apologize. Again, we're focused very heavily on the participation rates in these assessments, and you can see we're paying attention both to both components of it. And again, you can see some, we're doing an excellent job of meeting our goal of participation. Here is the overall performance on the math assessments by grade level. And I just want to call out, hopefully our community and certainly the board, we sent a more detailed communication about our math performance out earlier this week, which sort of spells out the rather exciting news of this level of performance on the common formative math assessment. Here's the analysis by student group. And again, we are experiencing some of the same equity gaps that we've called out in the literacy, but also note the degree of high performance, even by groups that have historically struggled to achieve high performance on other assessments. Here is the, oh, I'm sorry, I should have been clear. The prior data is specifically on the Zern assessments. That was my fault. I should have clarified that. This data is specifically on the math performance task. And one of the things I just really want to emphasize here is the degree to which we called out in our L3 report that many of the problems that students are tackling nowadays in mathematics, like these performance tasks, require grade level literacy. And so they're highly correlated to literacy performance. So that's one of the reasons why we want to give these assessments, because we want to get a sense of how our students are doing on these more complicated math tasks. Here's the analysis of the performance task by key student groups. And then finally, again, this comparison to the CASP assessment, it's very important that we, again, we're understanding to what extent our students are being readied for high performance on the CASP. And you'll see what we think is very promising data that for all students, for our English learners and for our students with disabilities, we're seeing tremendous progress in their math performance. So let me stop there, and I'm happy to take any questions that you may have. I will stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, David. Are there clarifying questions from the board?
Great. Thank you for that presentation. A few questions. The tests that they're taking now in terms of the first trimester, is the test the same in the second and the third time they take it, or does it actually change as the year goes by?
So for the literacy assessments, it is the same. So that is one reason where we can assess progress on essentially the same content that's presented to students each time. The math assessment is different, as I mentioned. That is more a single dipstick in time of how are students doing on the content that they've just learned. So in that respect, the content is different at the first, second, and third assessment points.
I have a bunch of comments, but I'm trying to keep my current comments to clarifying questions. I think the participation rate is great. I'm just wondering, there was one where it was at 88% in, where was it? Kindergarten, I think it was, no, first grade in math. Is that like one class maybe didn't input their information, or do we track that and find out how come that participation rate was a little bit lower?
We have been, yes. Yeah, it's located to a specific school, and we're working on why that occurred, and of course, making sure next time that doesn't happen.
Great, thank you. I want to make a comment. I'll save my comments. Thank you.
I have, I don't know, is this general or specific? You'll help me decide. My question is, I mean, it's amazing to see, well, okay, question, not comment. For folks that would be skeptical of this type of data and the story that it tells, what would you say are like the top 2 or 3 most compelling reasons why there have been such improvements? I know you mentioned them earlier, but I just want to I want that to be super clear for folks.
Say again for me the compelling reasons that
what created this change? What created this like, I think it's a pretty incredible improvement in the data. So why did it happen?
Yeah.
How did it happen?
Yeah. Well, I can refer, certainly to the math data. The points that we shared with the community there were, certainly this is our teachers leaning into, the demands of the math standards and that approach to teaching. I think that our teachers are getting more and more comfortable with what is considered quite outstanding curriculum, which is our ZERN curriculum. Secondly, I think the supports that we're providing them, particularly through the teachers on special assignment, that team of folks is providing a tremendous amount of support. And then third, I think, we've rolled out the idea of families accessing ST Math at home and feeling like, we need, especially for our students who may be struggling, we just need to increase the opportunities that those students have to access grade level work. And so we think that's an important resource. With respect to literacy, this is still very much sort of, benchmark sort of initial data that we're getting, but similarly, the emphasis with the at-home resource of Footsteps to Brilliance, I think is beginning to take effect. I also think, coming back to, I think our instruction stayed rather strong even during the difficulties of the pandemic. And so we've reported that, there are districts across the state that are seeing significantly dramatic drops in their literacy performance. And we experienced in many places holding serve or only slight drops, and even some groups doing better. And so that's a testament to, I think, our teaching staff and the work that they did over the pandemic and over last year in really bringing our students back to grade level performance.
Thank you. Just one more question. I was in reviewing the math ZERN data, the overall data. I found it interesting that it seems like something unique is happening in 2nd and 4th grade, because those are a little different than the average for the rest of the grades. Do you have an idea of why that would be?
So you're looking at the overall on the ZERN assessment. I just want to make sure I'm looking at the same data you are. And that 2nd and 4th grade. So, one of the strategies that we're implementing this year is actually our TOSA support in elementary school is highly focused on 3rd grade. And you notice, I think, the fact that teachers are getting support and they're getting opportunities really to dive deeply into the curriculum and what it's trying to teach. So you'll see really much higher performance in 3rd grade. And so I think that's a little bit of the contrast that you're seeing in 2nd and 4th is actually the strength of the performance in 3rd grade. Does that answer? I hope that answers the wondering you have.
Thank you.
I had a couple questions. I was wondering, one question I have is just around the reading inventory assessment, and like I know there's correlation to CASP. I'm just wondering if you could share a little bit more about like what the research or program shares around like what that correlation looks like, and I guess like how we know how strong that correlation is, if you could dig into that a little bit more.
If with your permission, actually, I'd like to follow up with you on that. I don't have the exact correlation numbers in front of me. We know that it is predictive. I don't have, how highly predictive at this time. And again, this assessment is giving us a Lexile level, particularly when we look at our students who are struggling and have a lower Lexile level. Our work going forward is actually doing then the follow-up work, the additional assessment work to understand what's driving that Lexile performance. Is it word foundational literacy decoding need, or is it comprehension needs? So that's the work that particularly in grades 4 and 5 in the strategic plan, we're going to be working with our 4th and 5th grade teachers in 2 inquiry cycles over the year, where we're going to really delve into that and think about what are the strategies and interventions that would support our lowest readers in 4th and 5th.
Got you. Okay. Yeah, I think that would be really helpful since we correlate it with CASP in this chart in terms of like seeing growth, to know kind of what aspects of it really and what don't. And then I guess I have a follow-up question, both for PATH and reading inventory. So you talk about reading inventory having a comprehension component, and I know PATH does not. I feel like I have like a multi-tiered question here. I guess, how does reading inventory test reading comprehension?
Okay, let me come back and actually the PATH program does have have components for reading comprehension. We have not collected that data yet, and actually have not asked our teachers for this year to provide it as interim data. We're focused on the single word reading and the alphabet test for the interim assessment data, but PATH does have a proficiency assessment that comes about a third of the way into the year. So in November, we'll be getting to that with our staff and helping them understand both how to administer that assessment and how to interpret it. So it's very important that we know that PATH has that reading comprehension component. And then of course, PATH is only one part of our literacy curriculum. We also have Benchmark, which is most importantly that opportunity to give students access to rigorous grade level assessment. So just want to make sure we're clear on that point. And then just coming back to the description, what Lexile level tells you is it's a kind of a screener that gives you a sense of how students understand sentence complexity and meaning within sentences. It's a kind of a closed CLOZE assessment where students are asked to plug in words that make sense within the sentence. So in that respect, it gives us an initial screening of what their reading level is. And then, as I said, it's important, particularly for our students who are struggling readers, to make sure that we follow up with additional assessment to understand, why they might be performing at lower levels. So I may not have completely answered your question there, so please follow up if I did not.
No, I think that you answered it. Yeah, I think that you answered it. And then my last question is, I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit about if we have, so, for example, like when we look at the math data and then we know that we have, Math Boost and various ways that we're kind of addressing that. I'm wondering if you could share a little bit more about what like the equivalent is in reading.
Sure. Well, just to recall that at the K2 level, the foundational literacy work that PATH does is in and of itself a kind of intervention, right? It's really targeting where students are in their development of their foundational literacy skills. And so that in itself is a very important intervention and support. Remember, students are grouped into small groups, and the very specific needs that they have are targeted through the Tier 1 curriculum. So that's important. And then we are in the process of developing a literacy boost that is similar to Math Boost. We'll be launching in the next few weeks in the district. And we're doing a lot of work right now looking at supporting students through our intercession camps, which will have an important literacy intervention component. And then I'm anticipating probably in January at this point, we will be honing in on a literacy boost that will be set up after school, primarily in our annex programs and through, if as we needed, an additional program. I think given the challenges we know we have with staffing additional after school interventions, we want to take advantage we have very talented folks in our annex program that we want to bring into this intervention support. And beyond that, we're looking at resources such as online tutoring, where we have online tutors working with a small group of students. That's another sort of path that we're looking at for the literacy boost. So more information coming on that. I do know we have a special session scheduled with you around the literacy work in March. So we'll be able to report at that time in much greater detail how, those programs and how we're rolling them out.
Great, thank you. Any other clarifying questions from the board?
Sorry, just a follow-up question, David. You had mentioned the intercession camps. Are we actually going back to that? Are we during our breaks? Will we have camps? Is that something, because I wasn't aware we were going back to that, which is great, but maybe
Yes, we are targeting a specific group of students for intercession support and working on that program right now. And I don't know.
It's a pretty recent change. About 8 weeks ago, the County of San Mateo, I want to thank our board clerk, Corzo. When she sees a grant come across her email, she never hesitates to send it to me and says, do we qualify for this? Will we be a part of this? So actually we applied about 8 months ago and didn't receive it. We got really good feedback on our application. We realized we left a few things out that kind of put us out on that other grant. So the County of San Mateo put a little bit over 3 million into the pot and said, come apply for this money. And the whole point is expand services for kids that need it. So they gave us $200,000, and we're using that money to offer these camps based on academic need and economic need, to make sure that kids who have few resources get this opportunity to come onto our campuses and get innovative instruction, Lego related instruction, reading instruction, math instruction, and even some social emotional learning activities. We're also reaching out to Music for Minors and some of our other partners to see who else we can bring in to do a really wonderful program for these kids. And it's currently a project between student services, ed services, and our annex program. Growing pains for sure, but we think it's going to be a really good outcome for these kids.
Now, Thank you. Fantastic. I feel like I just spilled the beans or asked you to spill the beans on it on something that wasn't ready yet. So I'm super excited on it. We'll circle back on that. But thank you.
Okay, if we could, Forrest, turn over to public comment, please.
Yes, at this time, if there are any members in attendance that would like to make public comment, please use the raise your hand functionality within Zoom now. And please keep your hand raised until the public comment section has been passed over back to the members of the board. We're going to start with Jean. Jean, I'm going to unmute you and you will have 3 minutes to talk.
Thank you. First, I love you do these assessments. I love that you share the data. Thank you. My comment is the way they're presented is very misleading. It's particularly like the final slide of the math you showed. And that was the same as the comparison that was highlighted very much in the email to all parents. A simple reading of that comparison, which is, a simple reading is really all the time most people have, shows really extraordinary progress being made. The kind of high level takeaway is, wow, students at the end of grades 2 to 5 last year were outperformed just 4 months later by new younger students just entering grades 2 to 5 this year. Clearly not possible. So what's clear in hearing the explanation tonight, and is helpful to hear, is the district is testing mastery of different material in the 2 tests. Even though they're being presented as comparable and side by side, they're definitely not comparable. So one is, the state Smarter Balance test of May last year, and is being presented compared to a totally different test that, our district has created for ourselves that's only testing recent material. So it's an apples to oranges comparison. Now, hearing, David Chambliss explain it, he uses words like this potentially could show, right? And that's better language, and it is a very necessary caveat. But the presentation of these side by side in an email, it doesn't come with those caveats. And the takeaway most parents from reading this quickly is these are comparable, and wow, things are really, going swimmingly. It's kind of misleading to a group of people who are really eager for real information. So I get it. The takeaway is, based on what we see, we're hopeful, right? But it's not a real apples to apples comparison. I'm kind of left not really knowing now, well, is there real progress or not? But also just, feeling a little bit misled by the email, and that's unfortunate. So, my question and comment to the board is, hey, I get it. Everyone here is well-intentioned and working hard, but the board, you're here asking questions tonight, and valid questions. I'm here asking questions. It's helpful to get more detailed explanation. But the email news has already gone out to every parent. So why doesn't the board review these announcements before they go out? You could even have a few members of the community, people who work with data all the time, weigh in, help vet these communications, so that when the message does go out, it's not so misleading. And I say all this because there's a lot of mistrust, there's a lot of anxiety about math right now, about what we teach, who we teach it to, when we teach it. And let's please build trust by communicating clearly about the results with real data. So I'd ask if you could please send out an updated email to the members, residents of our district, the parents, and kind of restate with clarifying language, with the caveats that were expressed here tonight, that these things are not directly comparable. And please certainly think through how the next update, the one to come on 6 to math, that how we can... Thank you.
Thank you for your time, Jean. Moving on to the next comment, we have Tara. Tara, I'm going to unmute you now. You have 3 minutes to talk. Tara, if you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Tara, we'll come back to you for the sake of time. We're going to move on to Christy. Christy, I'm going to unmute you now. You will have 3 minutes to talk.
Great, thank you very much. My name is Christy Rauch. I teach second grade at George Hall School, and I want to speak specifically to the elementary math common formative assessment that, just to clarify, are not teacher created. I do appreciate that on page 10 of the PDF that was attached to the board agenda, I do appreciate the comment that this assesses student understanding of what they've just learned and recent comment. And I think that's true for the ZERN end of unit, end of mission assessment, but it's a misrepresentation for second grade with the performance task. The second grade task includes 4 questions this time around, and 2 of the questions required students to gather information from a table. It doesn't appear that aligns with ZERN content from first grade, and it's certainly not content that was addressed in the first 25 days of second grade. In fact, it's not addressed in the first 2 trimesters of second grade. This specific task was used last year at the end of second grade, and it was also used last year with the new third graders. And although it is a second grade assessment, it's not appropriate within the first 25 days of school. I'm hopeful future performance tasks will be better aligned. Additionally, the first graders took performance tasks, but I don't see where that data is reported. And so I'm wondering, where is that information and how is that going to be reported? Thank you for your time.
Okay, moving on. Tara, at this moment, if you would like to use your 3 minutes to make public comment, please unmute yourself and you may start when you're ready. Okay, and if you would like to pass on, I'm going to take your silence as affirmation to that. We'll move on to the next public commenter. We have Randy. You have 3 minutes to talk. Go ahead and unmute your mic when you're ready.
Hello, good evening. So I appreciate the previous 2 commenters, and the comments that I have pertain only to the math results that were presented by David Chambliss. And I specifically wanted to call out the previous commenters' comments regarding the apples to oranges comparison and really highlight that. And also, I want to call the board's attention that you saw a very similar set of results around a year ago, October last year, where you were presented with formative assessment data. And I went back and listened to that presentation and looked at the results. And so a question that I hope that you would ask is, were the same formative assessments used last year and this year? And I'd like to remind you that the results that you were presented with, and I'm going to truncate it to grades 3 through 5. So it showed that 72.2% of all students were shown to exceed or meet standard for the math, and 43.2% of English language learners exceeded or met standard for math. Now that's very different from what those CAST results turned out, but they used, from what I understand, they used those results to identify those students that needed the intensive like math boost intervention. And so there is potentially an under-identification of the students that are in need of those interventions, according to these assessments, right? An under-identification if these results are being inflated. So this is my concern about, hey, everything's looking awesome, right? And hoping that the public isn't going to remember. So I just wonder, how are these formative assessments being calibrated to these ranges? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your time. Diana, at this time, would you like to make public comment?
Hi, this is Diane. I'm one of the interpreters. Can you please assign me as the interpreter because I got logged out with internet issues? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Okay, Vice President Watkins, at this time, there are no other public commenters.
Great, thank you so much for us turning it back over to the board for comments.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm glad that we are reviewing this as always. I do think that we can dive a little deeper into the data potentially. Maybe this is something that we can do a board study session on so that we can dedicate more time. And yeah, and I also just want to remind folks in the public that we also have board and community workshops that we welcome people to come and engage, not just on this issue, but any issue every single month. So thank you for your comments. Yeah, I think that we can dig deeper. Thank you.
Vice President Watkins, I'd like to also speak if possible. Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
I think, you know, when we're as a school district shifting into a data-driven environment, I think it feels new to a lot of our community members because this district has spent less time looking at assessment data that's this fresh, that addresses what kids are learning now, not 6-month-old data or year-old data. So this is a new process, and this is an exciting process. And I think that some of the comments that I heard tonight really focus on a deficit view. So what's wrong with the data? What looks off about the data? I want to really express to our parents and to our team members that, you know, we have a really dedicated team of wonderful, smart people that work here at the district office who pore over this information, analyze it, repackage it, and try to put it together so that our community really knows what we're doing as a school district and knows where we stand. EdSource printed an article 2 days ago, and actually the Daily Journal printed a version of it yesterday. And the title of it is basically Steep Declines in Achievement. And they point out districts all throughout California, in some cases, you know, less than 5% of their kids meeting standards in the entire district. In other cases, seeing test scores where the percent meeting and exceeding standards drop by 11, 12, 13, 15, 20% from before the pandemic to last year's test scores. And that isn't the case for our district. In fact, it's very different. As a district, our declines were minimal. And in some subgroups did better after the pandemic than before the pandemic. English learners improved after the pandemic in this district. I'm proud of that. And I really want to challenge our community to think about that. Think about what it means that after kids spent 1.5 years at home learning on a computer and then came back, remember what last year was like. We had one of the highest absenteeism rates that this district has ever had because of the pandemic. We were still sending kids home for 10, 14, 15 days because they had COVID. And it affected 1 out of every 4 kids in this district. So then to look at what our teachers are doing in the classroom and what our principals are doing at those schools, and as David pointed out, some very talented teacher specialists who are working with their colleagues. I like to think of it as teachers leading and helping other teachers, and a very organized and focused team of professionals here at the district office dedicated to a data-driven system. So we'll always take critical feedback and try to make our next report better. But we're really, really proud of the achievement that we have. And I think it's a tip of the cap to our teachers and these incredible kids that we serve every day.
Thank you, Superintendent Ochoa. There's a couple of things that come to my mind. I'll first start off, and as we go through this, my initial thought is something that we learned at, I don't know, it was one of the school board conferences, and I think Vice President Watkins, you mentioned this probably, I think, a month or so ago. We talked about, and we look at different school districts and compare different school districts across the state. And those school districts that are high achieving, a lot of them had a highly effective board. And I think what they had mentioned in terms of being a highly effective and highly successful board was the topics that they looked at. And I think what it was is something like most of the agendas and everything that the board talked about was something was like 70 or 80% was about achievement or so. Those were the discussions. And listening to this conversation makes me think of that, where we haven't necessarily done this before to this degree. Maybe it was a study session, maybe it wasn't. I know that when we went to each of our school site visits years ago, we would talk about data for that particular school down to this level, but nothing sort of on this in depth, I would say. And maybe it's because we did so many other things and there were a lot of other things, and it was a small segment of our board agenda. But I feel like we're giving it sort of the value and the attention that it deserves. I definitely agree that when you look at the CASP data and you look at our formative data, I mean, the tests, they're sort of apples to oranges, but I think there's sort of a snapshot in time in terms of how well are we doing. And it gives us the ability to make those changes throughout the year rather than us just looking at the CASP data at the year's end. So that I'm happy about. I'm happy that we're actually bringing it to the attention, that we're taking a look at it. Because there's this other saying that says sort of what gets measured gets done, right? And so by actually going through and measuring this out and taking a look, and you mentioned that we're coming back in March for the reading one, by actually bringing this to the attention and making sure that it's in front of us, not just in front of us in the back room or when we go to school sites, but actually here at the board meeting for the public, I think that's really important. And so my hope is that we continue this, and obviously there's some refinements that we need to make. I think that there are some comments that, you know, as we go through and present this, there's definitely improvements we can make. There's definitely improvement in the overall CAS score as well. And I'm hoping that while maybe these tests may be slightly different, that they are indicators of what's to come and how successful we are going to be. Because I do think it's really important. I mean, this is data that is really sort of a snapshot in time. And if we continue to do this and we continue to talk about it and keep it as the focus, you know, I'm pretty optimistic that we're going to see really big gains. And so I'm happy about this. I'm really happy about it. There were a couple of questions that I had, and now that I've got into my sort of spiel there, I've sort of digressed. I don't think they're as important. So I think overall, again, I'm just really happy that we have this, that we're taking a look at it, that we've broken them down into the different subgroups, that you can see different changes. And I'm really hopeful for the future that as we move forward, this is really just a sign of the times that we're making big progress, whether it's because of STNF, ZERN, or our Footsteps to Brilliance interventions, or whether it's the upcoming inter-session camps that we're going to be doing that we could sort of spill the beans on. I just really happy that the direction we're moving. So I want to thank the staff and the team and everybody that's been working on it. I don't think it's perfect, I don't think it'll ever be perfect, but I think there's always room to grow, and so I'm happy that we're moving this direction. So thank you.
Yeah, no, I think echoing a lot of what other folks have said, I think I'm really appreciative at how much we are talking about data. I can't actually think about a meeting recently where we haven't. And so I think that that's, the direction that we want to go for sure. Like this is, Trustee Chin, to what you said, I know that's something I've been talking about for years, about how much time we're spending talking about student outcomes, talking about student achievement, and I think that's what we're doing, and that's driving a lot of work, as is Superintendent Ochoa, and of course the team, everyone that's on the ground doing this work every day. And it's new, and so as with everything that's new, right? Like there's room for improvement, and so I think, two just kind of things that stand out to me. I think as we continue to execute more and more on formative assessments, we will have more formative assessment data that we can compare to other formative assessment data year after year, by quarter, across quarters, right? So I really look forward to kind of seeing that, because I do think it's kind of, I know I was asking questions around like how well aligned are these or aren't these? And so I can understand, like, even for me, I'm like wondering a little bit about like what those charts show, if those tests aren't specifically aligned and if we don't know how aligned they are. And so I think being able to show like the actual apples to apples is really helpful. And we know that there's growth happening, and like we have shown some of that apples to apples. And so I think just being able to continue that through line is going to be super important. So I look forward to that, and know that we'll have more opportunities to do that as we continue to strengthen our formative assessments, our consistent formative assessments, which like first and foremost this is, again, one of like the first times that we've really had those in place in like a very consistent, systematic way to be able to do that. And so which is like a huge step. And now it's like figuring out then how do we best make meaning of that and communicate that. And, I think there's definitely some like valid points that were raised in terms of just like strengthening our communication around that. And again, like, I know that we're, a district and a board that like continuously want to improve and get better, and also want to celebrate the wins. So I think it's a both and. And then my only other thing, and I think we can dig into this a little bit more when we talk about reading. I'm just really curious to learn a little bit more about how we're specifically assessing reading comprehension and kind of what that looks like instructionally as well. Like when I think about PAF and when I think about reading inventory, and like all of those foundational skills are like absolutely critical. And like, again, having a systematic way that we're like teaching kids and measuring and all of that is important. And there's more to reading than that. And we need to understand more about who our kids are as readers than that. And when we think about like rigor and all of that, I'm glad to hear that PAF has that component. I'm interested to hear what that means in terms of how we're going to be assessing kids and kind of what our long-term plan is for the comprehension part. Like benchmark is a piece of it, and I hear you, David, on benchmark being grade level aligned, and and it's not. I'm curious to dig into that a little bit more as we think about it. So hopefully that can just be flagged for when we have this reading study session, and I think that's also something that I told Superintendent Ochoa he'll maybe follow up with offline a little bit too, because they probably have a lot more questions than will fit in a 1.5 hour study session. So we'll do a little pre-sync before that maybe. But I think those are some of my thank you for continuing to push our district to be data informed, and we'll continue to iterate and improve. So thanks to the community as well for, being involved and being engaged and participating and giving feedback about how it does and doesn't sit, so that we can continue to get better.
I'll just add something really quick. Thank you, Superintendent Ochoa, for like reframing. I think sometimes it can be really a little bit challenging, right? To like present this kind of information and then have everybody interpret it in their own ways. And I do want to note that I feel like everyone that has comments and concerns and questions has positive intent, and so do all of our district staff and our kiddos and our board and everybody in general. And thank you for like reframing and like refocusing on celebrating the wins and the really encouraging data that that we saw and that we see. And also, I mean, like we have to remember to frame it and to make it super clear that it's just one snapshot in time. And like, as we continue into the school year, we will have more and more data, and that will tell a more full picture, that will tell a bigger story. So I think it's really important, and I appreciate you kind of recentering us on that. And then on another note, I wanted to say, oh my goodness, what was it? Sorry, I've had a migraine for a couple of days, and it's like has me a little off. Yeah, I will say, I just want to like highlight that several, what was it, like a month or two ago now, Trustee Watkins and I went to a board and community workshop at Park School, and that wasn't a public meeting that was on video and seen, but I will say that like we had a lot of like direct communication with families at Park School, Summers Hill Park Elementary, whose students are in these demographics of English learners and our most struggling students, who have felt like they are seeing a shift in the way that their kids are being supported and are learning. And so that, I think for me, is the reassurance, right? Because you have the data and the numbers and the assessments, and then you have like the qualitative data of like what are the experiences of the families and the students who are doing this work and being impacted by this work. And so when you have both sources of information, that's when you really have the full picture. And so I want to invite some of the folks that are really interested in learning about how our students are learning math and how they are or aren't, if that's the perception, making progress, and like go and visit a classroom, go volunteer, go learn from these teachers and see the work in action. I think sometimes like you have to do that if you really are skeptical, so that you can have that full picture. So I will end there. Thank you, everyone, for comments and for this dialogue. Thank you so much.
And I'll jump in one more time. You jogged my memory about a couple of things. The community is going to hear from our school district about our achievement scores all year long. This is not a one-time thing. This is not we're not cheerleaders, we're educators. And when we have results that we're excited about, we share that. And at some point, I don't know when, at some point, it might be an ELA test or a math test, we'll get scores back that concern us more than excite us. And we'll say, oh, we need to look into that. Because part of the commitment that we make as educators, I'm going to speak on behalf of our TOSAs here at the district office, our classroom teachers, our administrators, our district administrators. We care really deeply about our kids and what they learn in our schools. So right now, it's really exciting to see these results come in, and we see the growth and we see the correlation to this infrastructure we've built of teachers who are specialists, who are coaching other teachers, and administrators who got training over the summer on these programs, and teachers, hundreds and hundreds of teachers who received multiple days of training related to the very programs they're implementing. So we see the connections happening. And when we have results that excite us, we are going to share that in a very public and transparent way. And when we have results that concern us, we're also going to share that in a very public and transparent way. So it goes both ways. And when you have results that are exciting, you share that with the community. I also think that there's an additional layer that's involved here, because this is a school board that's been very ambitious in the last 5 years. And you all have implemented an agenda as a team to achieve results in a way that includes equity as a key priority. A year ago, you all put in place a series of changes in your math progression and your math courses, and your sixth graders did really well on your state tests, not internal tests, on state tests. And I got an email before this meeting from the state. I think probably every superintendent got the same email saying that on October 24th is what they're saying. They're going to release state test scores. That's great. If you punch in the names of school districts around us, you will see school districts that had 15, 18, 20% decreases in achievement. And sixth graders in this district did better than before the pandemic. That is an irrefutable success, period. There is no debating that. Whether or not we can replicate it, well, I think so. That's what we're trying to make it permanent, right? That's the goal of the equity work that we were doing. And that's something deep for us to talk about. Actually, we had a very thorough data-related special study session just a couple months ago. We held it in here. And we do these a couple of times a year to ensure that we give that opportunity. And I think what you commented on, Trustee Corzo, Clerk Corzo, is very true. It's how we arrive in this conversation, where we assume positive intent and where we say, hey, let's really dig in and work on this together. And I'm certainly committed to that work. And I'm just very, very thankful to work with a team of really talented educators led by David Chambliss and the team in Ed Services, and of course, all of our wonderful principals and teachers. I think that's a big part of it.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Ochoa, and to everyone for doing this work. All right, we are going to move on to 7A, the status report of Measure T and Measure X.
Yes, thank you so much. And I think Amy Rufo, our Director of Facilities and Construction, is going to provide us with our walk us through our update tonight. So thank you, Amy, whenever you're ready. I know she's streaming from her office, from what I understand.
Good evening. I'll share my screen. Okay, good evening, Board of Trustees. Good evening, Superintendent Ochoa. My name is Amy Rufo. I'm the Director of Facilities and Construction, and I'll be sharing tonight our Measure X and Measure T status update for fall 2022. This week, we had an exciting Bowditch groundbreaking of the $86 million Build, Rebuild, Renovate project, and that will be going on from now until 2025. The HVAC Phase 1 project this summer over at 7 schools. Right now, 150 units are fully operational. Abbott Gym, we had the flood almost exactly a year ago. The wood floor has been complete since right around Labor Day. So the kids are playing on that, and we'll be working on site improvements around the building to improve water flow and also site access. Solar RFP responses were received, And in the middle of receiving those responses, the Inflation Reduction Act came out, and we are now eligible for 30 to 50% rebates. This is one of the first times ever that schools will be able to receive these rebates. So they're not credits through our contractor. There will actually be checks back to us for adding solar. So as we negotiate with our vendors, we're looking at 30% is the base amount, up to 40% for certain demographic areas, and up to 50% due to domestically made products. So we're still going through that to understand how big our rebates can be. New School North Central, the Department of Toxic Substances Control has approved our investigation work plan, and that will actually be starting next week, where we'll do some more borings to understand the old structures that might be under the ground where we plan on building there in North Central. Next, bond sales, we're anticipating those for spring and summer 2023. Why we're currently looking at a range is that our 4 next multi-purpose rooms will be coming out of DSA hopefully between now and December, and then those will be going out to bid. So depending on those receiving successful bids and starting construction, then we'll know our cash flow through the end of our current issuances. George Hall multi-purpose room. We did a site visit with the board actually back in February and again this summer. It's very exciting to see the progress we've made. Also their field here in the bottom right, that's going to be opening next week so that they'll actually be able to use the field while the building's under construction. We're still on target for this to finish mid next year and then be serving food out of that for next school year. Turf field projects, the field on the left is Foster City Elementary, the upper right is the Audubon Quad, and the lower right is Brewer Island Kinder areas. We were able to finish these projects over the summer where we continue to work on their main fields. So at Audubon, Brewer Island, Fiesta Gardens, and also Bayside, that work continues. And those fields will be opening between now and the end of the school year. Bowditch Science and Drama, here's our groundbreaking photos. And then on the left-hand side, that's a rendering of the new science classrooms. This overall rendering of one of the buildings, this is the color scheme that will be going through the entire campus. Some of the interior colors are at the bottom of the screen. We're really bringing in inspiration from the Bay with the different blues and yellows. And those also happen to be school colors. Sunnybrae multi-purpose room, we received 5 really great bids. We'll be awarding that contract shortly, with then construction to start at the beginning of the next calendar year to be complete mid-2024. Here is our overall Measure T status report, highlighting at the top, we have Highlands, Lead, and Parkside submitted to DSA in May. Again, those should be coming out hopefully around Thanksgiving. Projects that were completed over the summer were the finishing of installing the vape detectors in the restrooms, water bottle fillers, phase 1, phase 2 should be completed in the next few months. Also added solar, some updates there. So a little different from when we first brought solar. We were looking at solar at both on rooftops and with shade structures. We switched gears to just look at shade structures since that was actually easier, not dealing with existing buildings. So we received multiple proposals, and we hope to bring that contract to you, to the board, in November. I've reduced the budget here from 18 to 13.5, mainly because we're looking at the shade structures. Once we finalize that contract, we're also then looking at asking each of the architects for the multi-purpose rooms and for Beach Park, looking at those architects to bring solar back to you. So once we know that full magnitude, I'll be bringing an update of what those costs would be to then bring solar to those solar ready buildings that we already have. As we come down the page here, we have turf fields phase 2. We're then looking at our next batch of sites. With some of those sites, we're also adding paving to that since we've already finished some of the HVAC projects and the trenching. Down below with paving, underground infrastructure, and flooring phase 3, those projects, we know the scope. We're just looking at the right time to start implementing those projects. Measure X. So the main change on this page is that Sunnybray, we received bids, and the Sunnybray project does differ from George Hall because of timing. We were able to add turf and paving to that project before it went to DSA. So we knew the scope had increased, but we had not increased the budget yet. So here, this increased budget includes that additional scope as well as its additional contingency. And then we've updated the multi funding sources here in the bottom right. We have our developer fees have continue, the balance continues to increase. And so the available funds that are not currently encumbered is at 8.66 million. And I'll go ahead and open it up for questions.
Great, thank you, Amy. Are there board questions?
I have a question to comment about solar, but I'm gonna say that for the comments. But my question is actually related to bonds. On the PowerPoint, we talked about issuing bonds later in the spring, I think it is, spring, summer for our other MPRs. I'm just curious in terms of our bond rating, like, and with everything that's going on with the market and everything else, is it, do we, sorry, I'm sorry, I'm looking at you, Magic, because I know this, you're gonna answer this question. Do we see our bond rating change with the economic forecasts that are coming out through the nation and through the state and everything?
So I was in communication with Chet just this week along those same lines. We're gonna have some further discussion about it. But I think more on a positive note, we anticipate in terms of our rating, whether it maintains the same or improves. That's kind of the dialogue we're having, as opposed to it being diminished. So, but we're gonna have some further conversation. I was just emailing him 2 days ago, kind of along the same lines, just from a planning perspective. So how about if we just agendize something for you in November to come back and provide you with an update, or I can share some information with you in the weekly correspondence the superintendent shares with you as well.
Fantastic, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other board questions? And Forrest, if we could go to public comment, please.
Yes, if there are any members in the attendance that would like to make public comments, please use the raise hand functionality within Zoom now. Okay, Vice President Watkins, there are no members of the audience that wish to make public comment.
Great, thank you. Turning it back over to the board for comment.
So I'll just finish off with my questions about solar and the Inflation Reduction Act. I'm curious, as I know that the details of the act are still being worked through and how it directly impacts us. I would love to find out, you know, what, when we talked about the 18 million and went down to 13.5, what really is the financial impact of this, the Inflation Reduction Act on the actual solar project, and whether that means whether we, you know, we set sort of a ceiling at 18. You know, originally when we had the RFP and they looked at the analysis for solar, it was well over 18 million in terms of fully going after our goal. And so I'm curious to see in the future, whether it's in November or later or some other update sort of analysis of how act is going to impact our solar project and whether or not we have to make a decision to actually do more, or do we just keep it at the 18 million or 13.5 of what we budgeted. So not really a question, sorry, but a comment for future. So thank you.
I can respond on that. But right now, the 13 million is looking at just the shade structures before any of the rebates. So that's currently looking at the proposal. So we could get 30 to 50% of that back. And then I'm currently engaging the architects of those buildings, what it would cost to put the solar on those roofs, and also the architect for Beach Park and some of the gyms. And so we can get that together and we can present that in November when we bring the contract to you.
Right.
But yes, but I know that I'm sorry, I think Patrick, you might be going the same ways.
Go ahead.
Good, no, you go ahead. I think.
No, I was gonna say, well, as Amy was saying too, when we bring forward to our goal is bringing a contract in November, which contemplates it. I think there's still some fine tuning of the exact impact. So what we bring to you may include some language about anticipated ranges, and it'll be on the conservative side. Ultimately, they have to commit to something from a price perspective to deliver. And as Amy was saying earlier too, the credits that come back to us, it comes in the form of credits to us as opposed to a net credit against the contract with the folks who are doing the work. It's credit back to us. So I think that as we walk down the path of planning, as Amy was saying, as we look at the non-shade structure installations, we can weave those credits into, when we do get clarification, we can weave those into our budget planning. Some of it has to do with the actual panels that we use to receive the credits, and whether or not there is going to be some retroactive credits because of supply chain issues. That's a part of the dialogue we're having with them too. And so they're trying to figure that out. So it's a little complex, but we're dialoguing.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that answer. I mean, from my understanding, it's all about, the materials and whether they're made in America and everything else. So there's all these details about whether or not we're actually really going to qualify or not in terms of what specific things do. So I appreciate it. It's a much further conversation. I just, for the future, that was some of my comment.
One last piece of minutiae, which is an interesting conversation, which is the time and the supply chain issues relative to the escalation of cost construction. So it'll be a decision we have to make too. But we'll keep you apprised. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Oh, and thank you for the presentation. Great update.
Yeah, I also want to thank you for the presentation. It's really good to see all of the information and the numbers and the background. And it's also really fun to actually be able to go and see it in person, just the initial stage, right? But the progress, I feel goes really quickly once ground is broken. And I remember at the ribbon cutting at Bowditch specifically, there were a few neighbors who were not super happy about the construction being done and the impact that it had on them in terms of living right next door to the construction. And I think it's always important to understand the impact on folks, but I think we kind of won them over with how excited we were about how many generations of students would get to enjoy it. And so, they came to the ribbon cutting, they learned, they heard the excitement, and yeah, I'm excited about all of that. And then I also just want to give a quick shout out to Board Trustee Chin for his all of his advocacy around solar. It's really good to hear about this rebate and that it's on the table. It's an option now, something that we'll be able to benefit from and that students will benefit from. And yeah, Trustee Chin has always been oh, what about solar? Oh, let's do the solar. Even when he's gotten critiqued for it, but it matters, right? We want climate change is a real issue, and we need to do our part with all of the new modern facilities that we bring to the community. Thank you.
Thank you both for the presentation, echoing a lot of what's said. It's just really great to see the progress and things moving along quickly and beautifully. And I know I've missed a lot of the recent things. My day job is sucking my soul out of me, but I'm there in spirit. I know that you uploaded the reports to the CBOC, which is helpful in terms of seeing actual expenditures to date. Would just like to request that those are included in future updates as a column so that we can see what we've spent, like what the current budget, how it stands and all of that. And so it just gives us like a real holistic picture of what that looks like. So that would be great. I did have a question around the Measure T budget, which, so it shows that we're over without really making, like some of, like for example, Bowditch, not, I'm just curious what, like I anticipate that could be something that would also go over, and this is already showing us that we're over and there are pieces that haven't started. And so I'm just kind of curious, like, what is our plan?
So the projects are listed in the order of importance and the order that contracts have currently been let. So when we get down to the bottom, paving, underground infrastructure and flooring phase 3, assessments have been done, but no contracts have been let for design. So when we look at those numbers together, that's actually a pretty healthy budget there. So, and actually in the next 6 months, when we award the multipurpose rooms, which these are the large part here with the buildings, we'll be able to refine our budget more and then be able to forecast more accurately. Until those buildings are bid out, it's a little difficult. But our plan all along has been with the flooring. If we needed to start cutting some scope, it would be cut from there. With $1 billion of need, we're trying to stretch these dollars as far as we can go. So to the very last dollar, we'll spend that on new flooring in classrooms. But we are implementing some new spreadsheets with some software. I actually am fortunate to have a new accountant on my team. And so we'll be working that when you saw those other CBOC reports and these reports, we're looking at merging it into one sort of report that you don't have to look between the two. That'll be easier to read. And I'll be hopefully bringing that to you at my February presentation.
Amazing. That would be great. And good to know about that. That's helpful in terms of, knowing that that's how they're listed and that there's a possibility that we might need to make some adjustments, but that these other projects will be prioritized. So that was my big question. Thank you so much.
We've earned interest, and I'll start to report that. I show that for Measure X, but I haven't yet showed the interest that we've earned on Measure T.
Perfect. Great. Thank you. Any other board comments?
Just one thing to add. When we were at the Borrell ribbon cutting was yesterday for the Wellness Center. There was a parent who came up to me about from Highlands, and I know we're of course doing Highlands, Sunnybrae, George Hall is obviously under construction, but Meadow Heights, and it'd be great if we can make sure to communicate out to those other schools that there are still changes to be coming, because she didn't exactly know that the MPR was possibly breaking ground in the next few months. And so I think as we continue to go through all of our infrastructure projects, it'd be great to let all the PTAs know of what's coming specifically for their schools. Because she was extremely excited about it, but she didn't necessarily know about it at the time. So it'd be great to communicate that out further. Thank you.
And as the new school committees have formed, we met with the ones at the end of last school year, and we're starting to get on the calendar now for the new group. So we'll be sharing that out.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Moving on to board member statements and requests for future agenda items.
I just wanted to follow up on sort of the passing of our former trustee, Lori Lawson. It's always very sad. I know we mentioned it sort of at the beginning because normally we change the meetings around and so we don't adjourn or won't be adjourning until after closed session. But I wanted to just make the statement that she really did give a lot. I think she was a trustee for 9+ years here on the board. And she was very impactful. I met her and worked with her when I was with the city of San Mateo, and she was an avid bicycle rider, huge Safe Routes to School advocate. And she created the Tour de San Mateo-Foster City School District, where she started up at the Highlands and rode to every single school in our district in one day and talked about, bicycle safety. That's 20, at that time, 20 schools. And I think it was over 30 miles zigzagging back and forth throughout the city. And there was a group of us who would join her in this, but it had grown where there was maybe 30, 40 riders at one time. And I'll always remember her in terms of her passion and her commitment to our students. And I just think she will definitely be missed in our community. And I just wanted to share that. It's quite sad.
Yes, I will also share. I think after former trustee Lawson gave so many years of her life to this district, and it is very sad that she went back home to enjoy time with her family, and unfortunately she lost her battle with the disease. And I was looking through my emails and I saw that she emailed all of us in 2018 with a picture of her beautiful house and shared a message about how excited she was to enjoy that time. And I do, I just want to give my heartfelt condolences to her family. But I do also want to say that, I know she got several years with her family and in her beautiful home back in the town that she grew up in. And her contributions to our district and are valued, and yeah, it's just very sad. And so condolences to her family. Thank you.
Any other statements or requests for future agenda items from the board?
I will just make a very general, quick statement. It is really important to participate in your community. That means voting. That means coming to meetings, engaging. That means volunteering in classrooms, volunteering in your community. So I just wanted to make that quick statement and reminder to folks.
Great, thank you. I would be interested in having an update at a future meeting around, I know as we're coming into winter and as we have an uptick in lots of things, just would love for us to have an update around, I know that there's a lot of work happening at school sites in terms of COVID mitigation, and would just love for us to circle back to that at a future board meeting if possible. All right, future meeting dates, you can see them here. We have 2 regular board meetings in November and December, and then a study session in special education in November and student discipline in January. We will now move on to public comments on closed session items before the board recesses to closed session. So Forrest, if you could just ask if there's any public comment on closed session items, please.
Yes, at this time, if there are any members and the attendees that have comments they would like to make on closed session items, please use the raise hand functionality within Zoom now. And with that, Vice President Watkins, there are no public comments that are being made for closed session items. I pass it back to you.
Thank you so much, Forrest. The board will now recess to closed session. Thank you so much, everybody. Hey, are you ready?
Ready, Freddie.
All right, we are returning from closed session. All right, give me 1 second. I need to have something else pulled up here that I did not. Sorry, folks. Okay. Item number 12A on the closed session agenda, a majority of the board voted 3-0 to approve a compromise agreement in the Office of Administrative Hearings, case number 2022-060-882 to resolve claims raised against the district in exchange for specified funding for students' private placement and parents' attorneys' fees incurred in this matter. Item number 12B, a majority of the board voted 3-0 to approve a compromise agreement in the Office of Administrative Hearings, case number 2022-070-888 to resolve claims raised against the district in exchange for specified funding for independent evaluations, compensatory services, prospective services, supports, and parents' attorneys' fees incurred in this matter. Item number 12C on the closed session agenda, majority of the board voted 3-0 to approve a compromise agreement in the student matter to resolve claims raised against the district in exchange for prospective services and supports and parents' attorneys' fees, less fees incurred in this matter. Item number 12D on the closed session agenda, majority of the board voted 3-0 to approve a compromise agreement in the Office of Administrative Hearings, case number 2022-060-358 to resolve claims raised against the district in exchange for specified funding for independent evaluations, compensatory services, prospective services and supports and parents' attorneys' fees incurred in this matter. And item number 12E on the closed session agenda, majority of the board voted 3-0 to approve a compromise agreement in Office of Administrative Hearings, case number 2022-070-820 to resolve claims raised against the district in exchange for specified funding for students' private placement and parents' attorneys' fees incurred in this matter. I now need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn in honor and in memory of former trustee Lori Lawson.
And now Trustee Chin. Thank you, Trustee Chin, for the motion and Trustee Corzo for the second. Roll call vote. Trustee Corzo?
Yes.
Trustee Chin?
Yes.
Trustee myself? Yes. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Right.